Adam and I sat down with the miniatures team from the Warhammer studio to find out all about the Orks from the Armageddon box set.
Wow.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Seb, Matt, we are here to talk about the Orks in the new Armageddon box set. Amazing army of stuff. When you're approaching a project like this, where do you start?
Yeah, so I was the project lead on this. We had a very long time before we actually started sculpting them to develop them and bring them up to date. We started largely looking at like all the old Orks. So we had years and years of like books to go through, miniatures. Luckily, I've been in the hobby since the 90s, and I was like very happy to work on this range.
Well, you were saying you were involved in some of the Orks we saw in the 2000s, weren't you? So like, was this a kind of return to some old favourites for you?
Yeah, totally. It was like scratching an itch that you've not been able to get to. Actually, I think I worked on them in like the early 2000s. And since then, I haven't worked on 40k as a large range. I've been on Fantasy Battle and AOS after that. So yeah, like it's great to be back on 40k. And I love the sort of IP of Orks. And that's why I was like just going over all those old catalogues and the books and stuff, like
you were saying you brought in some stuff from Rogue Trader, from second edition Warhammer 40,000, like going back really to the origins of Orks and their first appearances in Warhammer 40,000 all the way through the last 40 years of lore, really.
Yeah. Like there's a book I really loved called Wow the Orks.
Classic, yeah.
It's like such a weird book because there's like hardly any miniatures in it and no rules. It's just background. And yeah, it's really cool. Like the art is...
Orks can't even read.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
You make the process sound quite whimsical, sort of like it starts off with a trip down memory lane, sort of looking at the inspirations and things you want to bring into the collection. Is that fair?
Working on AOS, I'm often like, I start with a blank page and I could just make it up. But with 40k Orks, I was just like, it's like being on holiday. You've just got...
It's such a rich seam of stuff to draw from.
It was so fun, like just basically taking all the best bits that I thought from all the old work we've done. So yeah.
And how did you decide the mix of units? How did you know what you wanted to kind of put in the box?
Yeah, that's like a conversation with the design manager on the project. We thought we wanted to re-establish the core IP of Orks, like as the ultimate sort of space barbarian force. So we're going to do boyz, the war boss, the knobs, the grots, those sort of core bits of the IP. We've done like other releases with like buggies or the snakebite stuff we did. This was like...
So almost returning to the sort of fundamental underpinnings that make the Ork force what it is and what we know and love over the years.
And we haven't touched it for so long. It was kind of an easy win. Like we've sort of all developed in our skills and...
Yeah, since the last time some of these units have been visited, we've just gotten better at making miniatures, right?
Exactly.
Oh, you were talking to me earlier about some of the details on some of the boyz. So if we maybe start with that unit, that's the kind of archetypal Ork unit. What can you tell us about them that maybe wouldn't be immediately apparent to someone looking at them for the first time?
Yeah, so one of the things I thought needed addressing was there's a bit of a hierarchy problem that a knob was basically just a scaled up version of a boy and the war boss was a scaled up version of them, and I felt like there wasn't enough distinction between them. So we sort of partitioned what they could and couldn't have. So like the boyz, all their choppers are just sharp bits of metal. There's no custom choppers and there's no chain ones or powered ones. Those are reserved for the knobs, and then the war boss gets an even cooler version of everything. So
as well as the size of the Ork, also the technological level almost like gets bigger, like the bosses are sort of making sure they get the best kit for themselves.
That's right. And I wanted to also limit so the boyz have either got 0 to 1 shoulder pads. The
0 to 1.
The knobs have 1 to 2 shoulder pads, and all the war bosses, they've always got 2 shoulder pads. And it's a small, subtle distinction that just says they haven't got as much gear.
It's the sort of thing I had not noticed until you mentioned it. You're absolutely right. All of the boyz, their weapons are extremely basic. The knobs with their essentially chain swords, and then you've got the big boss over there. He's got sort of those power cells and things you'd associate with sort of more advanced weapons. It hadn't even occurred to me that you're displaying that hierarchy very specifically in their melee weapons as well as the other.
So there's a bit of that going on.
They're kind of bullies, aren't they? So if someone's got a better gun than you and you're bigger than them,
now you've got the best gun.
Another thing we wanted to sort out was the proportions. I felt like when you put some of the older Orc models up against a Primaris or Acadian, they looked maybe not as like grown up tonally, like the sort of realism level was less. So one of the big changes we did was reproportioning them. That doesn't mean resizing them. The boys are basically the same size as the Beast Snagger ones, but the guns are smaller. But when you put the gun next to a Acadian, it's still massive. They're still like big bombastic weapons, and
the pistol's still the same size as like a human torso, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it just meant that when you look at the whole Orc, the relationship with the weapon and the Orc is still more Orc. And that's what I felt was the biggest threat of the model, is the Orc.
It leans into how hulking they are. The descriptions in the lore are always these hulking brutes, they have a forehead that can stop a bullet, that sort of thing. And I think that really lands with the way these are presented. They've got like a looming presence, which is quite sinister. And often we laugh at Orcs. They've got this sort of slightly slapstick nature to the way they're presented.
Yeah.
But that's only if you're far away. When you get up close and suddenly you're faced with the real brutality and cruelty of the Orcs, it's a very different story, isn't it?
Yeah, they should always have that sort of completely over-the-top look.
Mm-hmm.
They're not subtle.
But still horrifying, right?
Yeah.
Place. They're still monsters.
Yeah, it's a monster. He's going to chop you up.
Well, let's talk about, before we get into the very cool stuff in the box, we'll talk about Grots for a little bit.
Yes.
What can you tell us about the Gretchen in this box?
These were, like, we all loved the sort of metal Gorkamorka ones. Mm-hmm. Like, when we looked through the back catalogues, Brian's ones were so sort of perfect sculpturally. We just wanted to replicate those, but then I was like, those are for Gorkamorka, really. So they're sort of like in rags a lot and don't really look like they would fight with the Orcs. So I sort of introduced some of the older second edition soldier Grot things, like the little helmets.
You can see the leanings in there with the spiked helmets in particular, and some of the auto guns and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I like that it looks like they're trying to be Orcs.
Yeah,
so they're like, they've seen a boy and they're like, he's great.
Yeah,
I'm going to try and look a bit like him.
Well, we were talking a lot about the sort of militaristic sort of vibe to all these, like having them with little army boots on some of them, and just made them more soldier-like.
Going back to the boys, there was we had a conversation about sluggers and choppers and shooters, because you really loved the image of them with shooters, didn't you?
Yeah, because I was like, I think in the past we made customers choose slugger or chopper or shooter, and I was like, I saw a lot of people just taking the extra attack and be like, they can't shoot anyway. So in reality,
miss out on this really cool looking Orc because you've chosen the better fighter.
The space barbarian with a machine gun.
Yeah, a guy with a machine gun. It's so cool. And so we were just like, why don't we just say they have Orc weapons?
Well, they're certainly not known for less Dhaer, are they? So,
no,
he's big and strong. He can carry a rifle as well as all the other gear that he needs.
I think that's been universally loved. Certainly, I'm a big Orc fan. I'm very happy to have sluggers and shooters and choppers on all my boys. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. Yeah, I just felt like it's sad to make people
But it sort of ties in with what you're saying about the Grots being a little bit more soldier-like. They've got all the gear that they need to tackle any situation.
Yeah, we wanted meaningful like gear on them. So like you notice they've got like packs and grenades and
there's a few stick bombs and things dotted around, extra knives. It looks like they've sort of found all the stuff they could carry and then just carried stuff until they're like, that's probably enough now. And then off they go to war.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's move on and have a look at some of the character models, because I think there's some amazing stuff in there. Almost like a command squad of Orcs, isn't it?
We wanted, again, like a sense of hierarchy in there. So introducing cloth banners back onto the models was a great way of getting the sort of clan colours, some space to breathe, some transfers. One of the other goals I had was keeping the armour plates kind of plain, because I was like, that's the relief for your eye on the model, like having some flat open space other than belts and stitching and all that stuff. Having those big slabs of metal, that's where your colour and your graphics are going to be. So having spikes on them, you'd lose that. So we tried to limit like what's on the armour itself. So you see like the side of the war track, it's got like a great bit of painted freehand on that in the clan colours. So if you rob customers of all their like little bits of canvas, it's just
So you had the painter in mind when you were designing these.
Yeah.
I enjoyed painting the Dhaer rig.
Yeah.
Lots of nice big open plates there.
Exactly. We give you a cool transfer sheet, and then we were like, where do you put a lot of these transfers? Because there's no flat spaces for them to go.
I mean, I love the war banner that's got a little bit of sculpted detail. So if you just painted it quickly without transfers, it looks perfectly cool. Yeah. But actually, there is a nice big open space there if you wanted to either freehand or use the transfers or flavour it to a particular clan, you can.
Yeah, with that one, I was like, I really wanted like a big clan icon, obviously. But then like they have all that cool IP of those little sort of glyphs with like, then they have meanings. So you can choose what glyphs you put on your...
And tell the story of your war boss and his retinue. With
it's just so fun.
There's also a lovely thing, we were talking with the team who were working on the Space Marines earlier, and the fact that they both have a really great sort of banner bearer in their force, I think does something really lovely and visual when you see the forces squaring off against each other.
That was, again, like really early on, like Daz was like leading the Space Marine side, I was leading the Orks. One of the things we talked about with management a lot was like this idea of the diorama in the box. Having, because in the past we've thought about, okay, these guys in photography will be on the right and these will be on the left, and they have a good side, you know. We wanted to take that a bit further and make it like, they're pairing up and facing off against each other. So like the weird boy looks like he's dueling with the librarian.
Yeah, it's really cool the way they go together.
And with the war boss and the captain, I was thinking like, I want this moment like the front cover, you know, like we want the two biggest like warriors facing off against each other. That could be a duel. And so, like a little thumbnail sketch. We've got a rough plan for each model. Yeah, so there are some like matchups in the set that were quite deliberate.
I think it's been quite well received so far, like especially the librarian and weird boy one looks like an immediately cool diorama, right? You don't have to do much to that before you go, well, this is a golden demon ready duel, good to go sort of thing.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot.
So I think that I think it's interesting when we look at this sort of the war boss's command staff. The big boss is a return of a concept we saw way back, but we haven't really seen in sort of more modern Ork times. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how he came to be?
Yeah, so again, we were just thinking about other HQ options, who you might have in that squad. Like we didn't want to mess up with the hierarchy thing that we just talked about. So he's like the same size as the other knobs, but he's just got bigger shoulder pads. They're like wider. He's got his own style boss pole with like these big tusks on it. All the other knobs have got like a little glyph on a pole. This guy has those tusks. We sort of elevated him a little bit with some ground, so he just looms a bit more. He's quite a simple model, but again, just wanted that like a little bit more personality rather than just leaning on press the scale button.
Sure. I love the fact that sort of within the sort of narrative of the Force as well, he's clearly got his eye on the boss's job, right?
Yeah.
It's like the more sinister version of an understudy.
Yeah, you'd have to keep your eye on him.
Yeah, all day.
Let's talk about the doc there, the Ork medic. What can you tell us about him?
This is, again, another really fun model. Like, in our minds, it didn't have to be complicated. Like, we thought about, like, how would an Ork administer health, you know, to Orks?
Not well,
like, no. And we were like, can't really imagine him, like, sewing people up or repairing people. So we talked about, like, giving him some, like, horrible syringe that just sort of stimulates you enough to keep fighting, even though you might be injured. So he's not really like patching you up. He's just like keeping everyone fighting with his horrible syringe, and just having him in that pose, it just looked like your worst nightmare.
The pose is very fun. Yeah. Excellent little Grot alongside him as well. The Grot orderly.
What keeps other Orks fighting probably also kills humans.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
He's an absolute lattice work of stitching as well.
Yeah, we wanted lots of sort of body on show to show that, you know, he's done his own surgeries and
look how good it is, boys. Don't worry, you'll be fine.
Like a, you know, scary little peg leg that's hobbling about. So he's definitely going for more creepy.
Ork healthcare is not it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the vehicles in the kit. So there's two new vehicles. If we start with the War Track, this is a returning classic for the Orks. We saw War Tracks in previous editions. This one is lots of homage to existing ones, but also lots of new features.
I think with all Orc vehicles, they should look like you could drive it into a brick wall and it's fine. You know, like they should be ramshackle and like crude, but there's a sort of bomb-proof,
like ruggedness to them.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think our most successful Orcs do look like they're just really tough. So having those big slabs of armor, the tracks look like really gnarly, very grippy. The tires are like really knobbly, super grippy, aggressive tread.
Well, it's just perfect for getting around on Armageddon, right? Which is always portrayed as this sort of ash wastes and like a hellscape, but you know, like essentially flat ground with rocks between like towering hive cities. Right?
Yeah. So I'm like a really keen mountain biker, and I love riding bikes. And that was one of the things I wanted to address on the new Orks, was just like get some proper bike workings on there. So like I was working on this straight after Wazdaka, which was like
another great model.
I love bikes, so I was like, I'm gonna
make sure they're working.
Go to town.
We did a lot of concepts for this one, didn't we? Like getting the weight of it right. How fast should it look? How much suspension should it have? How high off the ground should the rider be? And was it? I think it was quite a late decision to put a knob on the back, wasn't it?
We wanted it like, if someone's gonna stand on top, like it's not going to let a boy just
use all that massive
grab
gun.
that rocket launcher. Yeah. So we thought it's probably going to fight.
It looks like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So because it looks like a lot of fun, everyone's going to want to do it, which means that the biggest Orc's going to get to do it.
Yeah, and kind of like that barbarian analog. Like this is kind of like a chariot, and
that's a fun way to think about it.
He's kind of like a chieftain. So like.
Yeah, or like the champion of a unit of bikes that's with him or something. He stands up higher than them. And,
And then, in many ways, the centerpiece kit for the Orc side of Armageddon is the massive Dhaer rig, which I understand you were largely behind. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, again, like Seb did a concept for it, and we'd been talking about something new for the Orcs and like an artillery piece. So it's kind of in the vein of like what big mechs do when he's built things like the mech guns, and those smaller pieces of artillery. If he's built something so big he can't carry it, he needs some big mechanical legs to strut around on.
Oh, so the rig is actually a solution for the massive gun he's made?
I think so, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like a gun turret, but it can move around.
So before we started talking live, Matt was filling me in. I really like the complete absence of health and safety protocol with these drums at the front, which I assumed are for Prometheum, and you put me straight on that, right?
Yeah, they're ammo drums. So the belts from it's a 4-barreled rotary gun, but it's got 2 belt feeds. So I guess it fires from the top and bottom barrel simultaneously, and then it's going to churn through a lot of ammunition. So he's got 6 drum magazines, and when they run out, they kind of drop down in a chute, and they drop out the bottom, and the model's actually crushing a spent one underneath his foot.
There's also loads of shell casings out there, scattered around the bottom, so you can imagine it's just sort of wading forward and
there's
raining shell casings as it goes.
There's lots of empty casings like around his feet. He's kind of like on a little deck, so you can kind of get the impression that he's covered in brass and smoke. And
he also looks like he's having a great time.
One of the things that I love about that is there's often a misconception that Orc technology works because of like War magic or whatever, whereas actually the mechs are weird geniuses at making gubbins that actually do the job, right?
Yeah, I think he might not be able to write an instruction book on how to build one of those.
But he innately knows.
But he knows. He gets hold of some bits and he starts putting things together, and he knows what things work together.
Yeah. And it sort of stands back and he's like, that's kind of what I imagined in my head.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that, like, design ethos of, like, how much should this look like it works? I think if you've got a machine gun, for example, if you remove too much of the things that you're familiar with seeing on machine guns, like a barrel or a magazine, or like even like the cocking arm. Like if you remove all that stuff, it starts to like not
doesn't read
speak
right
to us, right? Yeah. So like we did explore a lot about how this all works.
How much can you strip back and it still feel right?
And we say Orcs are crude, but that's probably because we're comparing them to like Eldar and Space Marines. Like I think I couldn't make a gun rig. It's pretty cool. Quite complicated engineering, like an engine and guns and,
There's a nice thing with it as well, which is the sort of where sort of that brutal, chunky sort of technology, the legs, the gun itself, meets that slightly more arcane and weird stuff that the Orks are sort of known for, with his sort of force field generator on his back. There's a melding of those two sort of design inputs, and you see similar look to that on the I don't know what you'd call them, the tendrils coming out of the weird boy's head.
Yeah, there's got to be some stuff where we're just like, that looks mad. Don't really know. Absolutely. It's mad science.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a favourite unit or favourite model in this box, then Seb, what would you choose?
Probably the War Boss. I know I made it, but
you're allowed to pick the one you made.
Yeah, it's probably because it was like something I've wanted to make for years. So I was just really happy to finally.
You were talking to me before we started about like how you decided how big the War Boss could be, and obviously we talked a bit about how big the Orks are versus how big the Nobs are. Yeah. But you also used Ghazghkull for reference, didn't you?
Yeah, so we did reference like an early mock-up of Ghazghkull. Make sure he's not as big as that, like without the armor on.
So a Ghazghkull outside of his armor. That's cool.
So we're not like
and this guy sort of fits between essentially the Nob class of Ork and Ghazghkull.
I think Ghazghkull's leagues ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just so huge.
He's the biggest and the best, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
What about you, Matt? What's your favourite thing in this box set?
I think it's the Nobs in the boyz units. I love the shooters with the belt of ammunition draped over his arm. Those guys look super cool.
And there's one last element of this box set we haven't talked about, which is scattered around the various Ork units. There are a handful of squigs on some of the models. Have you got a favourite squig in the box?
I quite like the little hiding one in the helmet.
Sorry? There's a hiding on the helmet.
Yeah, there's like, I think it's this guy. Yeah, on this.
Oh, yes, yeah.
There's a Space Marine helmet with a little squig nestling in it.
The chat went wild for the squigs. Yeah. They were like, show us all the squigs. Go on, Matt. Which one's your squig of choice?
I can only see one from here, and it's the little one who's is he
sort of hanging off the Ork's leg?
Yeah. I quite like the one in the big boss. Sprue that's got like a little spiked tail.
Yes,
there's some variety to the squigs there as well. They're not all the same shape, just various squiggly beasts.
Yeah, squiggly beasts is exactly the term, like from that original book. Like because I've worked on AOS so much, every range I do, I add these little creatures.
Everyone loves them.
And they always steal the show. So I was like, we've got them already. Squiggly beasts.
I think there's something quite charming about that almost comedy sort of light relief element in the grim darkness of Warhammer, right?
Yeah.
So, you're looking at this barbarian horde descending and they've got these absolutely charming little squiggly beasts, and then some of those could also bite your arm off.
Yeah, that's what they look cute, but it's still going to, you lose a finger to it.
I don't know how intentional it was either, but I sort of love that the Dhaer rig sort of looks a bit like a giant squig if you squint.
It's very deliberate.
Oh, good.
Yeah. All the sort of the Death Dread is kind of an Ork. Killican's kind of a Grot. This is kind of a big squig. So, yeah.
Very cute.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, guys. It's been really interesting. This is the Warhammer 40,000 Ork side of the Armageddon box.
Cool. Thank you. Cheers very much.